Um,
Yeah, I
Eshet Torah, which we quoted today, and we'll read again the Nusach today, has a special section of videos from movies and TV shows that have Jewish context. Sometimes they add a little blog for discussion, like what do you think about this? And my absolute favorite is All in the Family, where Archie Bunker finds out that his friend Stretch Cunningham is Jewish, and he says um, Jews shouldn't have ham in their last name, and but this one is about Israel and it's related to Challah. So John Stewart, and it's not anymore available anywhere else except for Eshet Torah because apparently it offended somebody. Has this guy come and he's standing with a background of snow, and he says, I found this ancient scroll, and it tells us that the solution for the problem in the Middle East is that the promised land of the Jews is Halifax, but it's pronounced Halifax, like Challah. And then this other guy throws a stone at him, and he's supposedly Muslim. And he says, I also have such a scroll, and it is Halifax, and it's the promised land, and we're going to continue fighting over it, but it's pronounced Halalifax, as in halal. So, we learned yesterday about Hafreshat Trumot Masot and Challah, but we only touched on the rules. So let's go back to the principle in the Mishnah and Shabbat, chapter 2 of what's called Bamim Likin. The sages stated a principle: if the time arrives on Friday when there's uncertainty whether it is nightfall and uncertainty whether it is not yet nightfall, which is what we call Ben Hashmashot, between the suns, because the stars are also suns far, far away. So it's what's called twilight. It's after sunset, but it's not yet nightfall. One may not tithe the crop that has definitely not been tithed, which is called tevel, and one may not immerse ritually impure vessels in a ritual bath to render them ritually pure. Almost the same exact reason, which is makes it um, tikkun klik, fixing or correct or making something usable on Shabbat, and one may not light the Shabbat lights, of course, because if it is Shabbat, then he will be desecrating Shabbat. However, one may tithe the demai, which means literally a mixture, doubtfully tithed produce, which must be tithed due to mere suspicion, and one may place an eruv and insulate the hot water to be used on Shabbat, because those are not prohibited by Torah, and Dmai was a restriction of the rabbis in order to make sure that the proper tithes were taken separated from um, the fruits and vegetables. So before we go back to Rav Melamed, let's see. There's the besides the act itself of the separation, it has two parts of our using our mouth, our words. So the first one is a blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu. So as Hashem sanctified us with His commandment and commanded us to lafrish trumot u'masot, to separate the truma and the maaser from the fruits and vegetables, and then we make a declaration. And so again, it's very rare that we have to do this in Chutz La'aretz because the land of Israel makes sure that anything that's exported is in fact tithed, but it can apply to all kinds of other very interesting ideas. So just the declaration is basically the amount above 1% that is separated here as Truma Gdolah on the north side, meaning the north side of the fruit. Each species separately, because you're allowed to separate a few species at the same with the same blessing, and the 1% that is separated here plus 9 portions like it on the north side is Maaser Rishon, and then Maaser Rishon is Trumat Maaser, and Maaser Sheni, and Maaser Ani in case it's a year that we are supposed to give to the poor. And so these are the two processes that we make a declaration. And so Rav Melamed actually has a very interesting halacha, which I don't think that I ever learned, which is that you can make one before the other, and then on Shabbat continue the process because you already started before Shabbat, and that's how it makes it allowed. But again, we're talking about Dmai, and which means that it was already separated partly, but not completely. And even Challah, in one of the recent discussions, I'm not sure if it was Daf Yomi or Mishnah, we talked about how, uh, or maybe it was Rashi, we talked about how Challah used to be separated with an actual role that was given to the Kohen. Today we don't do that, so it's a little bit different, but so let's go. This is part two. Truma, Maaser, and Challah may not be set aside on Shabbat because setting them aside resembles dedicating them to God. Additionally, it looks like one is fixing or improving the produce and basically fixing a utensil that is broken. If one made a mistake and unknowingly set them aside, the remaining produce may be eaten on Shabbat. In contrast, if he did this knowingly and deliberately, although the action is effective and the remaining produce may be eaten, no Jew may eat it until after Shabbat. There's a few different acronyms here that I don't think that I've ever notice the difference. So MT in the second line from the top, it stands for Mishneh Torah, the Maimonides halachic work of 14 volumes. The little M here before Trumot is Mishnah, Trumot chapter 2, Mishnah 3, and MB stands for Mishnah Berurah, and I'm not sure if there's a written lexicon in the Peninei Halacha, but I found this out, I guess the hard way. So one who is concerned that he will not have time to separate Truma and Maaser before Shabbat, so maybe the person bringing in the produce didn't get there until like 5 minutes before candle lighting, or like they were supposed to, let's say, get there at 3 p.m. and they didn't get there until very much later. So may recite the formula for the separation before Shabbat, but without the bracha, without the blessing. And so he's already starting the process, which is, like I said, a big chidush, a big innovative idea. By doing so, he has begun the process of separation. Then, after Shabbat begins, he may tithe in the normal fashion and recite the bracha. This procedure may also be followed if one is concerned that he will not have time to set aside challah. So again, we can make the bracha about separating the challah, and then when it comes out of the oven or otherwise, we can separate it afterwards. Only the owner of the produce may separate truma and maaser on Shabbat by means of the procedure described in the previous paragraph. It is not effective for anyone else. If a guest is concerned that his host may forget to tithe, he may ask the host before Shabbat to appoint him a shaliach, a proxy, to tithe on his behalf. The guest may then recite the formulation before Shabbat and perform the actual tithing on Shabbat. There's a very interesting discussion in Baba Metzia, of all places, about a goy separating the Truma master for the owner. So if he works for him, it's like almost like their agreement that before he brings it in, he separates, but the owner is the one who makes the blessing. And there's also discussion about what happens if the Kohen takes it without the permission. So if he took the exact amount, then it is properly tithed and everybody's happy. The question is just, is the Kohen obligated to share it with his other Kohanim brethren? And again, these things are just incredible because we don't practice them almost at all today. But the idea that there's a separate Mishnah called Dmai, a separate tractate, which is concerning only these things that are questionable, meaning I don't know if everything was taken properly or not. I'll just mention one of my friends from a long time ago, just before Kiddush, he took a little bit of the wine and spilled it, I think in the sink, if I remember correctly. And I asked him what that was, and he said, well, he's not 100% sure that the people who produced the wine took the proper amount of tithes, so he's doing it to either symbolically or for sure make sure that there is a certain amount that was taken. So he didn't measure by weight and maybe not even by volume, but basically it was in his mind, since he did this every Friday with a new bottle, unless I guess if he used the same bottle 2 weeks in a row, then he wouldn't do that because he already did it. But every time that he opened a new bottle, he would do this, and so and that is quite common that we have wine from Israel in our midst. And if you have that practice, which I don't, I'm just saying that it was interesting that he wanted to connect to Eretz Israel in that way, and so just wanted to mention that, and we'll stop here and open up for questions.